Well, the grand jury has reached a decision in the death of Breonna Taylor in regards to the three police officers in question. And of course, ever present, we have our good old friend Ben Crump from Trayvon Martin fame many years ago, involved as usual, making a bunch of unsubstantiated inflammatory statements in his role as the quote family attorney. Um, Essentially, we have two of the police officers were, of course, not charged, and one was charged with something that's not directly related to her death. But apparently, the individual in question in the incident fired 10 rounds, many of which went into an adjoining apartment, not the one for which the warrant was served on, which got him a serious reckless endangerment charge. Um, so And at first, I thought that all sounded pretty hokey till I heard the details from the Kentucky Attorney General, and I went, well, I kind of see why that's happening there a little bit. However, the idea that that's going to placate the mob is a whole different issue too. I mean, basically, what you have here is a case of a young lady who seemed to like to hang out with the bad boys, and ended up having a warrant served on her in the middle of the night after midnight. And the result, and apparently, although a lot of what the press said about it was misinformation, and so as usual, we have an inflammatory situation egged on by a media that's very careless. It looks to me like that a little bit more research should be done before one throws all these things out, considering the consequences they all have. Um, I guess while they were authorizing the warrant to conduct a no-knock entry, in reality they didn't. They did actually announce themselves. On the other hand, the individuals in question were asleep apparently when they come crashing through the door. So apparently, at least they didn't totally wake up in time. And her boyfriend fired a round and apparently hit one of the police officers, who then returned fire, and in the crossfire, she was killed, and I guess he was completely uninjured, and apparently he didn't end up facing any charges in that case, seeing that the state does have a stand your ground type law, and I guess his claim is he didn't know it was the police. So basically, we have to look at fundamentally the death of Breonna Taylor is just a tragic accident and is really in no way racial at all, except in the degree to which activists like Benjamin Crump and BLM make it that way. The same sort of incident could just as easily happen to people of any other race, white, Hispanic, etc., who had the kind of associations that were involved here. The side question that's been raised by and such a lot of people, including Senator Rand Paul, is the question of the no-knock raid concept itself. And there is a case to be made here. I believe that no-knock originally started many years ago because as part of the war on drugs, in which the issue was that the police would announce themselves at the door. And while they were waiting to get entry, the drug dealer would flush the contraband down the toilet and then allow the police to enter and not have the evidence on hand that would lead to their conviction. And I think that's essentially where that idea came from. On the other hand, when you combine that with stand your ground, which I do support stand your ground, that does lead to a situation where tragic accidents can occur. But let's also understand there are other incidents. For instance, there's a case, and I'm forgetting what the state was, not too many months ago, in which a Caucasian individual was served a red flag type seizure of his firearms. And I think that was conducted something like at 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that, which awoken from the police coming and showed up with a firearm in his hand and was shot to death. So, I mean, it isn't. So that's why I say these kind of incidents or accidents are not racial in nature at all, and yet they're being used to inflame racial tensions in an artificial way. it just shows you the absolutely terrible media we have in this country, and I think they're responsible for a lot of harm and destruction. Um, Fortunately, Louisville seemed to be prepared for what was coming and had boarded up the businesses and had the police deployed, had the National Guard ready. And so the overall mayhem was minimized, which probably led to some real frustration, which led, and the two police officers were wounded by a shooting. And I guess they have the suspect. So he will probably end up with a very lengthy prison sentence for that. And I think, fortunately, the police officers will survive and hopefully fully recover. I don't think we've had a real readout yet on their exact medical condition. This is always terrible when these things happen. So I just think this kind of shows, though, the ridiculous idea that everybody's running around saying justice for Breonna. I mean, yes, but I mean, it's inevitable that these sort of things are going to happen. You cannot have police work and warrants served. I mean, I can think of instances where a warrant was served and the police officer was just shot to death too. So, the idea to pick out the isolated case where an innocent person is killed and then figure this is a great cause celeb to change everything is really asinine. Now, I do think the police ought to really consider the idea of how one can conduct some of these things. Like, is it really necessary to do it in the middle of the night after 12:30? I mean, on the other hand, you have to also figure out when they're going to be home, and I guess if you want to catch them there. On the other hand, I guess you're just trying to search for contraband. Maybe actually carrying out the search when they're not at home might be the best way also. So, I mean, I think that it seems to me to be a thing that ought to be considered by the police, which it's more of a tactical issue than an issue of law. I don't think what they're doing in any way is illegal. I think it's just a question of what's the safest tactic for both them and for the people that are having the warrant served. After all, apparently one police officer was injured to some degree in the incident as well. As far as the one charged with the reckless endangerment counts, that one, it seems like he did go a little bit wild. I mean, when you're in a residential neighborhood with several different people living there, including the suspects, to shoot wildly into the building and hit other apartments is a little on the reckless side. So, on the other hand, if he gets a change of venue out of Louisville to someplace else, who knows? He may be able to. I don't know. He's been fired from the police force, which is, and nobody. And apparently, his rounds didn't actually harm anybody, although they may have done some property damage. So that's the way that settles out for now. But the bigger question, I think, is every time there's a police accident of this sort, do we have to actually have a riot? I mean, seriously? I mean, this is not going to lead to a stable country, and in the long run, it's going to do a lot more damage than the relatively small number of police accidents of this sort that occur. I mean, I think I've said previously, and I'll say it here, far more people are killed by medical accidents, by doctors, that are killed by police officers by accident. I mean, relatively few really instances sort really do happen, considering the number of high-risk encounters that occur on a daily basis. And it seems to me like that the media, rather than inflaming the situation, would be better advised to try to calm things. I don't know what the ultimate result of this is, but that's kind of the way I see that. Similarly, this is in the case of the George Floyd thing, which I've done a video on previously, who I'm increasingly convinced simply died of a drug overdose, and it was no way was his fatality due to police activity. And I don't know why there wasn't a better information put out earlier on this, but in reality, we have a lack of information and a lot of propaganda, a tremendous number of riots, and then in the end, we'll probably find out that, in fact, the police officer didn't cause George Floyd's death at all. These are the problems we face at the moment while the police are under attack, and I don't know how you recruit and retain a competent, reliable police force who, after all, aren't that highly paid for the most part in an environment like this. Well, I'll close for now. And like I say, if you like these videos, subscribe and give me a like. And if you have any comments or feedback, please make them and forward them to any friends. All for now.